Okay, here we are at Down to Earth Horsemanship. This is video 2 for today. We just did a 20-minute sort of liberty session, but it wasn't really. It was more me talking about trying to give an insight into the philosophy that I have towards horsemanship and some of the reasons why I do what I do, at least why I do what I do today. As you see, I don't have a big budget like Pat Pirelli and Clinton Anderson and others to have videos set up here, etc. I've just got the little iPhone in my own hand. So what I want to do now is this filly's got a bit of flightiness in her, and I don't want to say, you know, how this is what you do with a flighty filly, this how to deal with it, because no, this is how I'm going to deal with it today, and I don't even know how I will. It's just basically I'll see what she does and then go from there. So it might not be how you do it or whatever, but it's an insight into how I do it, which may be of benefit to some people. So I've just caught her, and then I'm just going to play with her a bit like this. So she's still unsure about things, and you know, she's only young, and you know, she wasn't handled as a foal. She had the human association here and there when we're feeding the mum, and she might have got a bat down the forehead, but she was running in, you know, a 500-acre paddock, and you know, pretty much just the horses and in the herd, and that was it. She had, you know, some other little foals and a little brother out the back here. You can see the other Palomino fella here, Jackie, was running with them for a while there. So I've talked about this before, is like you know, we can act in ways like just really gentle, and you know, try not to disturb the horse, and just be really pottering around it and touchy-feely, and let's never ever disturb the horse. But to get the horse out of its reactionary mode, it has to be learn to do that with various levels of stimuli, and without increasing that stimuli, how does it learn to be able to deal with its own emotions? Because that's the point of the philosophy, I guess, of what I do, is I'm asking this horse to deal with things, to take responsibility for its actions. I've got to take responsibility for my actions, and that's how I behave, and in every aspect of my life, who I am as a person. So we want to get this horse. So it's, for example, like I was involved in big business for a lot of years, and I remember when I started out, you know, the amount of stress that I could deal with in the beginning wasn't very great compared to by the end, you know. Most people, they wouldn't sleep for a year with that kind of stress, just keep them up at night. But you learn to deal with higher and higher levels of stress. And a lot of people talk about they'd like to be wealthy and successful. When most people say they'd like to be wealthy, what it generally means is they'd like to stay exactly the same as they are now, not have to grow and just win the lotto. But the problem with that, and so many studies have shown, is that if you don't change as a person, and you keep that, you know, that mentality you had before, then pretty soon that money just gets wasted away. You end up worse off than where you started. So, you know, if I want to be a big businessman and things, well, a woman, to do that, you've got to be able to develop the ability to deal with greater and greater levels of stress. So stress is not a bad thing. Well, stress essentially, when you're having stress, is your inability to deal with something, with the stimuli around you, with your circumstances, etc. So it's not in the sense that this one thing here is stressful in and of itself. No, it's the fact it's a subjective thing. It's your ability to deal with it. So what's stressful for one may not be stressful for another. It's the same when it comes to horses. But if we never ask that horse to deal with greater levels of stimuli, it won't be able to learn to deal with that, and it will remain in a stress state for the whole life when certain stimuli happen. and that's dangerous when you're sitting on top of a 400 or 500 kilogram creature that can move sideways at 60 kilometres an hour in the blink of an eye into, if you're riding along the side of a road or something, into oncoming traffic or into a tree or a barbed wire fence or any kind of thing. And when they're in reactionary mode, you see when horses are in reactionary mode, they run over each other, they run into fences, they run through crazy things. There's not much logic there, there's not much reason there when they're in that kind of instinctual mode. So what we do here, down to Earth Horsemanship, is everything's about helping that horse logically, using its thinking capabilities to understand progressive levels of stimuli. But it's not just done in a willy-nilly way, it's all done in a way that is going to be reflecting what we need to do with that horse throughout its life. So this sort of thing, like that, is a bit of a fast movement into the girth there. But how many times through the horse's life are we going to be carrying something in and putting a saddle on its back, or a saddle blanket or a rug coming in at the wither there? So if we do that, she's bracing for it. That's just instinctual. So there's a little bit of stress there. So we'll work at that, but I won't just stand here for 10 minutes and do that, because I don't have that kind of patience in my mentality. So I always mix it up and arrive at the same place, but doing a few things at once. So here we might have to move that horse off us. There we go, a little bit sideways like that, just to get that horse nice and relaxed on the inside there, and then follow here, move it all across this way. Because when we're on that horse, we want to put pressure in here and step that horse up and keep it soft on the inside there. So it's a little bit sideways and a little bit forward, so we keep that lateral flexion in there. Even when the horse is going straight, I want it to bend. What that means is that I want it soft on both sides, that it can bend at any moment, either way. So we want to stop that there, stop the forward motion, come back the other way, a bit sideways here. So we can go into we can play around with all little games like that, little transitions. So sometimes when I'm being a bit bullish, a bit rough in my nature, a bit harsh you could say, then I'll come in and I'll be being a bit like throwing stimuli at the horse and that, and it gets the horse a bit disturbed, and you can do that and go through it, and then the horse just stands, and some days are like that. And it's probably not a bad thing. In one sense, the horse gets to deal with you in not at your best. But if we do it in an educational way, where we increase the stimuli in a way so the horse can think about it and progress slowly, the horse will be a lot more relaxed through it. So one thing is increasing pressure is, as this horse progresses throughout its life, we're going to want its movements to be very refined, its stops to be harder. It's coming back through itself. Of course, I'm a lot of my examples are used because I train my horses to work as cow horses in cutting or camp drafting. I'm not a big competitor, but that's just sort of like how I grew up, and what I like to do is use those as the basis, especially cutting, for getting the horse very, very soft and relaxed, and also, getting that horse to follow without any direction from the rein. It's a nice challenge to put into practice the philosophies and theories of horsemanship. It's got to be practically demonstrated somehow. It's not like you don't have to go and be the best in the sense of go and win a futurity, because that requires a significant investment, time, money and energy into that discipline. And there's people that, like I've talked before, they may win futurities, but they're not great horsemen per se. They're great trainers, but not great horse people, and they may not be great people. They may be quite cruel and vicious how they achieve that result. And in the greater scheme of things, it's only significant subjectively to the people that are involved in that particular sport, and the subjective importance they put on it inherently, existentially, it doesn't really have much fucking importance at all. I found in that regard, what's the importance is the innate, the development of consciousness, the evolution of consciousness, the improvement of that, and from that everything else manifests. So when it's a metaphysical subject. You know, we're dealing with things like overcoming anger, greed, lust, envy, jealousy, and all the developing virtues, etc. So it's a metaphysical, something that we can't. It's beyond the physical. We can't really see it. We can see it manifest through the physical, but in and of itself, they're metaphysical ideas. Okay, that's just enough for now. It's a couple of videos and a bit of a talk. Well, there's other things I can do here. Is step in here to Belle and say, go back. And come forward. Like that. So all these sorts of things, move the fronting around, side passing, all in a sort of just a relaxed sort of way. I do that sort of stuff. Today, that's just today, there might be other sorts of things I'll do. Like, for example, I've been working on her, like touching her legs, picking her legs up and all that sort of stuff, and she moves away and we go back to this side to side, and then I might be coming one thing Pirelli shows on one of his nose, like coming in like the drunk man and grabbing the horse in here and going side to side and doing that. What I tend to do with the horse when I'm breaking it, when I get that there, I just keep coming into the side and touching it there, and I start bouncing either side and climbing up, and then I climb up and lay on it and climb all over it, that sort of thing, like a monkey. That's sort of my approach to that sort of thing, and getting the horse just to chill and stand, and then they handle the saddle and everything else pretty much from that point forward. A bloke called Frank Green, they come in and they'll get the horse caught and they'll lay the horse down and then pat it all down when it's laid down on the ground and let it up and then hop on it bareback. So they're achieving the same result that I do without laying the horse down. So this laying the horse down, people it became really fashionable. Oh, every horse gets laid down. Well, I don't really do it very often. This filly was laid down the first day, but I tend to do it on certain horses if I feel it might be of benefit. But if I can just do it the other way, like with the chestnut fella over there, just day two, just jumping around him, hopped on him bareback, and off we went. So it sort of depends on the horse. You just didn't need to be laid down. So if you get from what I discussed, you get it. It's not so much talk about the methodology, do this and do that, because if you have the right philosophy and understand, well, we need to get that horse moving forward and back a direction, and we need to get that horse moving this shoulder off here, coming forward. We want him to come forward. Come on. So if I get a bit around to the side there, I can't put much pressure because I'm holding this phone on the lead to give a bit of direction there. Step that shoulder out now, and we might want to step that front. Relax. So she's stopped. There we go. There we go. A bit of side pass like that. Bit of front around, 4/4. Keep that behind. Move the hip around. And then come through here. And we might say, come this way. So she's watching, she's still trying to, she's still learning everything. She's like, okay, there we go. That's what he wanted me to do. And we'll move her off there as I move into her. And we'll stop. She'll stop. And let her know, okay, that's it. So it can be done in a fluid sort of way. You can get the 4/4 coming off. You can get the rib and that side pass. You can get the hip coming off, backing up, and all sorts of things. In a fluid kind of motion as everything's sort of going and doing it more going forward. And then you can have the horse trotting around and go into a kind of a bit of a side pass stop. All sorts of manner of things. That you can play around with, but there's still the principles are there. So like Pat Pirelli teaches it in a certain way, breaks it right down really good, and there's certain people out there that have criticism for him, but there's anybody that's successful was going to cop criticism. Well, even if you're not successful, you'll cop criticism. It's just the nature of the world. But I always recommend to students. I bought the book when I was 17, so it's a long time ago. But it's just a wonderful book, that first book of Pat Pirelli's, and just all the basics of breaking it down, and, you know, teaching about slow, you know, and then increased pressure and getting that hip to start moving off, and then the forequarters and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's wonderful. It breaks it down nicely. It doesn't explain why he does it, but as you work a horse, so you want that horse soft in here. If that horse is soft on the inside, it makes it easy for that horse to step back through this way and lock that hock, step over itself there, and then it's in this position here where we can step that rib up, and it's got that hind. It's utilising that hind there to balance, so it can stop straight away. You can see she's back. She's going back onto a hock already, and we'll go this way. So she's learning to balance on that hind. We're doing both directions to get her balanced. Then she's immediately soft on this inside. To get that hip out of the way, she gets that hip out of the way, it allows that front to come through, nice and relaxed. So the reason that Pat teaches those things is to make everything easier dealing with the horse on the ground and in the saddle, to keep it between the legs, relaxed, comfortable, and following direction. Okay, thank you, Belle.